Hello.
Everybody's like, what is going on here? Oh, look at your beautiful faces. Okay. So
JP.
what's funny is you guys can't see me, but I can see you. If you have Twitch up, you can see me and you can see comments. So I don't know if you guys have it up in front of you, but
yeah. Oh, let me get the link.
Yeah. That way they have it. Sorry, I need to pull these up. So we have your logos. There you go. See, I added a little bit there where I can. That was my editing on the fly. Put your guys' logos right next to it. So I'm sorry, you guys were about 10 minutes late here, but I had people pinging me and be like, yo, you coming on? What are you doing? We're here. We made it. Okay. We're across the world. You have to work on these things. But William, Jacob, Robert, welcome into Stack Lab, guys. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hello, my friend.
Absolutely. So,
Jacob, Billy, nice to see you, man.
Nice.
You too, man.
Absolutely.
I actually don't know your name. I just know you as Highlander.
Big Rob.
Yeah, Big Rob, Robert. It's a funny story about that. When I was getting ready for the Jacob interview last week, I was like, so is it Rob? Is it Highlander? And he said, oh, no, it's Robert. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't know. Very formal now. Very formal. So I think a lot of people are very excited about this, guys, because, all of a sudden one day on OSMO, you look and there's this golden shovel on Dig for those of us who were unaware. And that got me interested in looking more about this. So from what I read about Dig, I was super pumped about the possibility. And I assume a lot of people are too, but not a ton out there yet. And we want to learn more. So you guys are from Dig. And if you wouldn't mind, how I like to always start this is a little bit of a background, and then we'll kind of roll into Dig and what's going on with the ecosystem. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So do you want to, let's start left or right, which on my screen is with William, or is it Billy, or what do you want to be called?
Yeah, sure. Billy is what my friends call me. William is what I'm sort of known as publicly.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll sort of give a brief background of mine. So I came into the crypto space about 2 years ago, and it sort of began with DeFi for You, which was a project on BSC, still a project on BSC. And so I was working with them I'm still working with them a little bit as well, for about a year and a half. And then we met Jacob through sort of
mutual friend.
Mutual friend. And then we kind of realized that he clearly knew a lot about the Cosmos ecosystem. So we wanted to explore that. And the idea kind of began as a governance token for DeFi for You with Dig. And then a very long conversation began, which I guess you would be more sort of poised to tell about that, about basically tokenizing real estate. I'll let you kind of...
Okay.
Yeah. Please.
So, I mean, sorry?
I was going to say, yeah, please. You're talking about something that I think is like the holy grail in crypto to me, because as your website says, there's a lot of money in real estate. You bring something like that into crypto, that's a game changer. And a lot of us, just over the past couple of months, not necessarily shitting ourselves because we positioned ourselves well with Cosmos and other good projects. But if you had something like real estate that you could actually move to in times of volatility, that's a huge deal. And so, yeah, God, please, let's talk about this.
And just that was one of the starting points or jumping off points for design. All right, our CEO Adam at Dig is just jubilant fellow, and I met him. I had an unrelated meeting, and I was like, okay, all right, I'll be back the next day. Let's talk. And so we went through a whole bunch of different things about, well, okay, so how's it different if you're building a blockchain? And, what is it that you want to build? And we also discussed kind of like a mutual concern around intangibility.
Yep.
If your, let's say personal finances or anything like my own, there's really not much tangible at all. And yeah, I do have interest in purchasing real estate, but frankly, because all of us use crypto so heavily, we're also used to having certain assurances about how transactions work.
Sure.
Right? Like they're fluid. They don't involve a whole lot of red tape. And things like that. And then, of course, if you've ever bought a house, then you know that like it's about the furthest thing from the permissionless fluid liquid
Oh God, yeah.
crypto asset acquisition process,
Yep.
right? And so we kind of set out with the goal of providing real estate opportunities, cryptocurrency holders, and decided to build out on Cosmos. And I should say that right now, what's out there is probably not even the tip of the iceberg. What I mean by that is, the present blockchain does not support NFTs, although we're going to move away from that term. We're going to start talking about it more as a land registry. Of course, the underlying tech will remain an NFT,
Sure.
but we feel that land registry is much more accessible.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain what an NFT is in that case.
And people were getting confused as well, where a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, it's digital real estate." Like Sandbox. And we're like, no, it's actual real estate.
That's it. I never thought about that. You're right. That is what people think in this industry anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of people were getting a little bit, I think, confused. So that is probably a term we're going to start using a bit more, is like maybe a digital land registry, or just a tokenized land registry, or something along those lines that kind of differentiates it from the pixelated NFT land.
Sure.
Interestingly, what's that?
No, I'm saying agree. Some of the chat here, sorry to butt in, but someone's asking, do you guys have a website yet? Or Jacob, I know you just run solely on GitHub. Are you still running with that for the moment, or would you like to share any websites to the viewers?
Oh, we do have a website. It's digchain.org. So that's it's due for an upgrade, but that is where you can find at present the light paper. We'll be updating a full white paper on there shortly.
Nice.
That'll be kind of going through GitHub as well, a bit first, I think, as well. So we've got kind of the draft of it, but we wanted to sort of put that public and allow other people to come in and kind of comment on it a little bit as well before that goes fully public.
Nice
a lot
one.
of this will sort of come together in Dig Volume 2, which at the moment we're sitting on V1. V2 will kind of have a lot of interesting things where we'll be putting CosmWasm smart contracts onto Dig, partly to help fulfill Dig's mission, but also partly, that will essentially allow people to just do fun and exciting things on Dig Chain as well, using the CosmWasm smart contracts. So all of this will kind of come together with Dig V2, where we'll have this kind of updated branding, updated website, updated blockchain. And then, the big thing with Dig is a parent chain. So if you imagine this is the parent chain, the sun kind of thing. And then around the sun are all the planets. So the planets will be like regional blockchains. Each one will essentially be a clone of the parent Dig chain, but it will be tweaked. And the tweaking will mostly be to program it in order to comply with localized regulations.
Sure.
So each regional chain will be regional. So you have, say, Dig UK, or in the US, it will probably be like state by state, like Dig Florida, Dig Texas. And the blockchain will be programmed to be compliant with local laws and regulations around real estate. So we figured that going forward, this was not going to work unless it actually follows the law. And we think a lot of stuff in blockchain is going to be changing to be more compliant in the future. So we wanted to build this in a way that would be able to comply. And we sort of, you particularly mentioned this in that first meeting, a lot of projects that have tried to tokenize real estate have sort of failed because they haven't been able to expand past a very local, a local region. Or
So do you think that was the main reason about, remember that token real, and it kind of fell flat in its face as well? So you think it was the sort of regulatory issues that you're having locally with local governments and stuff? That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I did a podcast with a member of their team once, and I really, really liked the project. And I can assure you that, you know, some of the conversations that I had with him have influenced our choices for Dig. Like, for example, you know, we're talking about realty. It was weird because they had American properties that were wrapped in an LLC and then sold as fractional tokens. And then you could receive a portion of the rent. Like, that was really, really cool and smart as hell, and a great use of Ethereum blockchain, and a huge source of legal overhead cost. And so, like, we're going to start in places where, you know, actually the local regulators are actively interested in having Dig, you know, basically as a legally recognized land registry. And thus far, I mean, actually the inbound interest has been incredible. One of the things that I've pretty consistently said about Dig, and definitely want to set expectations on, is that, you know, it'll take some time because we're working in the physical space. But, you know, there's a setup in Ukraine that is now official, and I can even mention it. Woo!
Hey!
And
that's topical too, you know?
Very true. Very true. And they have fully legalized crypto. But, like, we are not going to have regulatory issues doing this in Ukraine.
Right.
Which is really a hell of a thing. I mean, consider, like, if you have, I don't know, a bunch of staked atoms or some such, right? You want to acquire a piece of property in any of the places that basically we find to be legally compatible. And another one in the United States, Wyoming.
Yeah, right.
Looking like we could do it very well in Wyoming. Other states, especially my own, New York, maybe not.
Yeah, no kidding.
The IBC structure that Cosmos uses is what is allowing us to custom tailor the chain to every market. So, like, Dig itself is one chain. Its purpose is to spawn more chains.
Interesting.
And each of those chains that it spawns will serve a local market, you know, exactly to their specific needs.
Sure. Okay, so you guys just unloaded a ton right there that my mind was like, oh God, what about, because immediately my brain goes to, one, it's smart to go where places where they're saying, yes, we want you to come in and do this. But immediately there's some thoughts that come to mind on real world things happening on chain and that sort of like trustless aspect of it, right? Like, so you started off with a joke, Jacob, about like, if you've ever bought a home, like there's nothing easy about it, where it's like, you're not like, this should be very straightforward. I mean, I remember my first house I ever bought, it was, 250 pages of documents and registering and all that. Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? And so creating those things or finding a way to do this on a blockchain is at both places comforting and kind of scary. So how do you bridge those gaps? Like, yes, this is what the legal structure is in UK Dig, and these are how this is where this registry is. Here's how it translates to the blockchain. Here's how this connects to the Dig main hub, right? So like, that's kind of where my brain went, which is like multifaceted there. But could you kind of talk about how you make that leap from real world into Dig UK into Dig, and like the verity of all that, if that makes sense as a question?
Yeah, and I think that I'll take this one. So at the local level, the chain will be written to comply with local regulations.
Okay.
And the dig chain community will literally have checked with the local authorities, like, okay, we can put land on this chain and that will be legally recognized. And we're going to check it extremely thoroughly.
Yeah, right.
We're going to ask our community members to check that, okay? And the whole idea is that we're kind of changing the place where these records are stored.
Sure.
One of our validators, Joe Abbey, has mentioned that, like, every county in the United States has a county clerk.
Yes, they do.
And the county clerks, they, store their land records. And yeah, this is sort of where we're heading with that. Now, you may be wondering next, okay, how does that link to, for example, the dig mainnet? Well, interestingly, it does not need to.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that we are is an open source software framework that literally anybody can pick up and build a chain to serve their local needs with. So it can connect to the dig mainnet. The dig mainnet is going to build a mobile app that's going to look a bit like Zillow. It's going to aggregate information from all the chains, and then hopefully deal with questions like this. Okay, so
okay.
I'm an American. I live in Vietnam, and I want to buy a property in Zambia. Let's say.
Sure.
It should be able to tell me if I can or can't do that legally, right? Like, there are various places around the world where certain nationalities can purchase property, others can't, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And this is the kind of stuff that we could store as metadata. And basically, inform the user about pretty much automatically. And maybe the other big piece of this is then okay, so real estate, it's valuable. And a lot of people may wish to come together to develop real estate. So now you're talking about capital aggregation and potentially lending.
Sure.
Again, IBC seems pretty much perfect for this. And the way that we're going to do this is kind of building as we go, because there are going to be a hell of a lot of very different regulatory frameworks that the project needs to comply with.
Right.
I have a feeling that the local chains will end up a little bit template-y. But, for example, I had no expectation that when we began this about 6 months ago, that we would have a project in Ukraine. Well,
right.
Kind of thought the first market might be Vietnam, but actually it is a regulatory question involving the way that real estate is owned here. They use a physical system. There's a little booklet referred to as a red book, and that makes it challenging to do the digital representations, although we are definitely in talks with both developers and the state, and there's just a lot of questions.
There's a lot of desire for something like this here as well, just because that system is so inconvenient when you have an actual book, and it's, to my understanding, real estate ownership in Vietnam is not really determined as, say, I own 30% of a property and Jacob owns 70%. It's just me and Jacob own the property. There's no differentiation in terms of fractionalization.
Sure.
So something like this could come in and change that. But obviously, where it is so, doing that here would involve an entire structural, restructuring. So that would be more complicated short term than doing in, say, Ukraine, where I believe last night they signed off on the crypto bill, which means it's now officially law. So crypto is now legal in Ukraine. And some people, when I've said this, have kind of been like, oh, the place where all the news is happening. But the reality is, if you're in Ukraine and you own cash or stocks, you might want to put those into real estate very quickly,
Yeah.
or to another asset to try and hedge against potential volatility in the Ukrainian market. So something like this that provides such potential quick and instant access to diversifying your portfolio into real estate, and not just for people in Ukraine now, say also for people who are holding Bitcoin or or Atom or anything. You look at your portfolio and you think, what am I holding? And like you said earlier, it's for both of us and maybe for you guys as well, it's mostly crypto.
Right.
It would be quite nice to be able to change that. And but for me, buying real estate here, there are certain limitations to what I can buy here. If I go back to the UK, there are certain limitations as to a kind of mortgage I could get in the UK because I'm an expat, I haven't lived there for a long time. So if I could go onto a DApp that just said, okay, here's property in Portugal, you can buy 1% of a beachfront property in Portugal. It's expected to, the market has looked like this in the past.
Yeah.
Here's the legal data. You can buy it. You can only buy it on a lease of, say, 60 years. Like, this is the key points you need to know. I think that's something that there's massive demand for. And as Jacob said, that's kind of the mission of the parent dig chain, so to speak. That will be a big part of its development and also the governance as well. So Dig is, at the moment, largely a governance chain. We've already had quite a active governance community on there.
Yeah, it's been really cool. That's been a lot of fun.
And that's now have several more props to go on as well. So it's been great to see that be active as well so early on.
Well, it's interesting for you to say that too, because I'm just going to reiterate my understanding of what you just said, because I think it's actually a hell of a solution to a real world issue right now. You just kind of touched on. I'm going to be more blunt than you are. Imagine you're sitting there holding cash. You're potentially facing an invasion from a foreign entity, and you have the ability to put that cash on chain and kind of move your assets out of your own currency into real estate assets worldwide to protect yourself as you get through times of geopolitical volatility. That's a big fucking deal. Sorry, my language. Okay. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Ukraine who would love that hedge right now.
Yeah. Well, and convenient timing for them to legalize crypto as well.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, thank God their assembly did that. I mean, that's that at least to get them through that. So, all right, so that's pretty crazy, and like you can kind of see where that would go. And so Rob has a question, and I have a question too. Like we've been talking about CosmWasm, we've been talking about interchain smart contracts. You're talking about what happens within Dig, and that seems fairly linear in terms of how that would kind of operate between main governance into zones and how you could pull that together. What about getting into the entire interchain at large? We saw you talk about implementing CosmWasm. What does that look like, and how does that happen?
Well, okay, so actually, this has been a driver inside of Notional Labs. So, like, Notional Labs is many things, but a software development firm, and we built Dig. And, so, all right, here's the deal. I was involved with JUNO and helped with the implementation of WasmD on it. I'm watching JUNO grow and grow. And I'm also one of the larger IBC relayers in Cosmos.
I heard that. I want to talk about that too, but I don't want to pull away from Dig. So good background. We'll come back to it.
This is where they all connect, though. This is actually, so this directly links up to Dig here.
Okay.
Basically, like you were asking, okay, so how do those interchain contracts come into play?
Yeah.
And interestingly, I don't think anybody knows for certain yet.
Okay.
What I mean by that is there are demos of contracts talking to one another. There are not yet contracts talking to one another on mainnets.
Right.
And we're really excited to be potentially, maybe the first, if not the first, one of the first, where there will be, on one side, there will be a WASM contract. On the other side, there will be a WASM contract, and those two are going to speak to each other.
Right.
And frankly, like, I'd like to start with something incredibly simple. No tokens at all. Ping, pong, ping, pong. That's all. And the relayers are exactly, yeah, exactly. Once that begins, you can then, start to think about modeling more complex logic.
Right.
You can start to think about, well, what are the possible interplays between like tokenized property on Dig and JUNO swap? And to be honest with you, like, I have not fully considered this stuff, right? And the reason is that without CosmWasm on Dig and the other chains in Dig, right? I don't think that it's going to be possible to like even describe it clearly.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure that there's going to be really interesting stuff, though.
I think one option is to tokenize a house, fractionalize it, and then airdrop it.
Well, seriously though, I mean that's where
That's like an incredible thing to do.
Yeah.
well you hear about the things that are happening right now on other chains. In fact, I saw something. So I'm not a huge NFT guy, but I've dabbled here and there. I have Boryoku Dragons on Solana. They're a blue chip NFT on Solana, right? And they released something yesterday, today. They had a space or something talking about how, hey, you have this blue chip asset. You can fractionalize it. You can liquidate 49%. As long as you hold 51% of it, you can get money out of it. You can, go do other things and still retain ownership of the image where you can sell it. You can determine it. You kind of have control and kind of pull liquidity out of it. You're talking about a house like, okay, I have this, $100,000 house or $1 million house or whatever it is, fractionalize. I'm going to pull liquidity out of it right away. And still be able to move on. Like, again, real world things that could be done with some sort of lending protocol or something that would allow you to do that, right?
Well, one of the interesting things, and this is by no means me saying that this will be a guarantee, it's just a conversation that happened with a friend of mine when I was back in the UK. He was very keen to put one of his properties on Dig as a kind of just very keen to do it. But one thing he was really interested in is, would putting his property on the blockchain and exposing it to such a global market actually increase the value of the property? And it's something that, like I said, we can't guarantee.
I believe that is going to be a success indicator. If we begin to see a consistent price premium versus properties that are not listed on Dig, I mean, then most likely we'd gain momentum very quickly after that.
Yeah, we just put your house on with an extra 5%, right?
I tell you what, in a lot of ways, and obviously I've been in crypto for a while. You guys have all been in longer than me. But I kind of think of it as like, there's a beachfront property in New Zealand that I can throw into. Yeah, I'll throw 20 grand into it. Like whatever that shit that happens in crypto. Like I'm thinking, yeah, I'll throw 20 grand on Matic. I don't really know what it is, but I'll give it a go. It might go up, might go down. And that's just a very like bullshitting around conversation, let alone actual like hard assets like this. I can appreciate over time. Like I said, what intrigues me the most about Dig when I first started reading about it was that hedge, because we're all sitting here right now going like, man, Bitcoin was like 70 grand a few months ago. Now it's 38. We're looking at down the barrel of something crazy. You give me real estate, which apart from art has been the best investment in the world since people started staking their claim. That's a paradigm shift of an investment, right?
Yeah. Another idea that I personally got that I do think is possible. Don't you consider like Hong Kong or Singapore for a second, where they're tiny, right?
Yeah.
So if one were to take a blank space of land, provided that all the regulatory issues were worked out for that land's development, you could see incredibly rapid real estate development, because the financing of that development could happen likely faster than ever before. Also, I've got a feeling that the transparency that you can achieve with a Cosmos chain will facilitate that as well. And so like one of the models that I'm hoping to see happen, I don't know if this will happen, just like Billy said, I don't really know if the price premium will happen, but something that I'm very much hoping for is to like see somebody take the dig software, create a chain, work out, some piece of land somewhere, potentially even funded by the dig mainnet, right? Because the dig mainnet, it's there to facilitate the development of all of these local projects,
Right.
without scope restriction. And that's the purpose of the community pool. That's it. So, and essentially, like, create something really unique and new. I realize that that's a hell of a, it won't be easy,
Right.
But we didn't ever expect that this would be.
Sure. And it's funny. My next question is going to be a little bit more like me putting my investor hat on for Dig, because I see what you're trying to do. I see the value it can become, and I think part of the fun and why I love doing this is you're essentially talking about another Lego, right? In the entire scheme of investing and crypto. So like I see it, like anytime you can add a Lego in, that's amazing. I've seen some other things. Like I interviewed Bob Reed from Everest ID like a year ago when Everest was coming out, and they were talking about like essentially ID on the blockchain, which again, like I still get chills when I think about what that can do for third world countries and pulling people on where you can't necessarily get an ID. And that's a big deal, which we all take for granted in this space or in any developed nation. But I got the same feeling there. And what was always hard for me to understand with Everest ID was how do you direct revenue or advantages to token holders. And that was always my issue when I looked at Everest ID. Yes, if I don't care about making money, I'm going to throw into this. If I do care about making money, why should I own ID versus just helping out and sending money to help a village get their IDs on the blockchain as a form of charity versus me investing in the token? So if you wouldn't mind me being so blunt, like the plan with Dig, the token itself, and how does revenue accrue off various chains into the governance token, or why you should buy Dig is really what I'm asking you.
It all has to do with, well, in my mind anyway, what I've seen on the Cosmos Hub. Okay, everybody questions. I go, what the hell is it even for? Osmosis has more IBC transactions than it, but check this. I think I know.
Okay.
So Gaia is the second largest Cosmos SDK chain. It is definitely the one that, even though it is politically entangled, to be sure, it is the least politically entangled, and it has the largest, like most diversified user base, right? I think Osmosis has more daily users, but I do believe that still the Atom has more holders.
I believe that, yeah.
And like what I'd like to see the hub end up getting used for is actually for the hub to invest. And what that does with the price of the Atom, right, is there's no cap at that point.
Right.
When you're talking about like, okay, we're going to do XYZ technology thing on this chain, well, yeah, there's a limit on the value. It's essentially the limitations of the technology, right? But when, and maybe this is a good time to mention, most of the chains in Cosmos are actually Gaia derived.
Yep.
Meaning they share the code, they use all the same structures under the hood. So point being that, like, I strongly believe that the Dig community will figure that out. And also, I mean, I'm in conversations in the Cosmos Hub governance group, kind of trying to nudge Gaia that way as well, because like there have definitely been situations recently where had it been arranged through governance that the holders of the Atom should realize something based on a funding action that was initiated on the Cosmos Hub. Okay, so forget the Interchain Foundation.
Yep.
Forget Tendermint.
Sure.
They don't exist, right?
Yep.
We're talking about just the hub. Look, I think that is actually, so one, it satisfies those like hub minimalists who don't want to see additional features added to the Cosmos Hub. And then two, it satisfies the market. There's a lot of work between there and here, but in my mind, that is the market. Like that's where Dig's value is going to come from.
Okay.
In terms of other stuff, for example, airdrops of local chains, stuff like that, we can't speak to it yet because every single one will be different.
Yeah, it's okay.
Now, is that something that's probably strategically good? Yes.
Yeah.
Do we know that it'll be legal in every jurisdiction? No. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so we don't really know if some of these regional chains will have their own token, if some of them will just be fixed on NFTs. Like Jacob said, it really depends on each one. And also, someone could just clone the code of Dig, make a regional chain, set up their own one in like Brazil, and then we just wake up one day and we're like, oh, we have an IVC connection. What is that? Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's likely that there would be some kinds of conversations along the way, but theoretically anyone could do that. We were actually one of the most sort of interesting use cases I've heard of Dig so far was a U.S. military contractor in Puerto Rico.
Oh, this one was good.
Oh yeah, I can hear this.
Puerto Rico wanted to create a kind of like the beach style community that was governed by a regional Dig chain. So 100 people living in a kind of beach community, self-sustaining, and all governance decisions are passed through the chain, which kind of sounds like a really interesting use case for it, actually. And anyone with the technical skills could set that up really themselves and just go and do it, which is something that I think, Dig we made deliberately to be very simple, kind of, one, so it was efficient and secure, and also because it can be utilized in that way. Sure. And then we've also had ideas stemming up to the national level and also more private business orientated. For example, there was one idea to basically crowdfund wind turbine development. So you could have approaching a wind turbine manufacturer, then basically pitch to them that, okay, we'll make you this chain. You can actually crowdfund development for a wind farm. And then I think like a small wind turbine generates about £11,000 a day in output. So the owners of the sort of NFTs, fractional NFTs that represent these wind turbines would get paid dividends on a daily basis, or weekly, monthly, whatever, based on the output of the turbines. So this is, two ideas that people have brought to us that are very different for regional chains and that aren't necessarily on a national level, but that just sort of demonstrate the possibilities. And, some of this stuff could be funded by the community pool on the Dig mainnet, and then other ideas can get passed around there for its governance to set up individual chains. So the governance, I think, is really a strong selling point, not just of the parent chain, but also of all the regional chains as well.
Sure. That makes sense. I guess it sounds to me, and feel free to be like, no, Jared, you missed it. Because again, I try to understand, but I do sometimes miss it. So it sounds like what you've built is essentially with like pure customization in mind, easy to adapt. Here's the use cases. You're really taking that decentralized approach to say, we're not going to tell you how to use it. We're going to say, this is how it can be done. We're going to pursue some cases that we see. However, it's as much about you making it what you want and us kind of being there to help you. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
And we're thinking of that like there's no company, Dig.
Right.
There's DeFi for you, and there's Notional. Both of us, in terms of like a business perspective, we're absolutely here to facilitate the development of additional local chains, and very happy to do so. In addition to that, though, we've had community members just like step up who they kind of got the opportunity and seem to be planning to bring their own projects and their own ideas up in front of Dig's governance. One of the things here, I'll share the governance proposal real quick.
Sure.
I'm actually thinking to try to raise the percentage of inflation that goes to the community pool from 5% to 10% to actually fund more of these initiatives.
Yeah.
My gut feeling, again, this is instinct, but is that the governance thing is really going to work. The IBC thing is really going to work. So
Yeah.
that is to say that within the next year, there ought to be actual places where real estate is either being sold or developed using this. And then, if I want to get into my big hopes, right? I'd like to see real estate flowing over IBC. That'd just be such an amazing fulfillment of what's like for me been like we're talking about like a 6-year engineering journey now. I was out of Cosmos for a bit, did Bitcoin mining, but we've all been doing this for a while, and to be involved with that would just be incredible.
Yeah, I guess you kind of went where maybe I was going next or considering going next, because what milestones do you see, right? Like you said, in a year there will be places, or maybe things are interchain. You can kind of realize that transfer of value, not only of token but real assets that are tokenized or whatever it may be. Like, when you sit around and talk about it, because by the way, I agree with you, putting more back in the community pool to fund specific development, I think would be amazing, because that makes people go, oh, there's a pot, I want to try something, let's figure it out. So one, that's a great idea. But two, like, when you look at your milestones for what comes next, what are you guys sitting around being like, fuck, we need to get that? Like, this is next. Like, so could you help walk me through what the next milestone is?
I think the ultimate, absolute, main, most important one that for everyone is to set up a regional chain and put property on it. I mean, that
okay.
is, until that happens, everyone's going to be like, oh, that's a really cool idea.
All right. Let me know when it's going, huh? Let me know when it's working.
Property. Once we have one property even on there, then it's like, holy shit, you put property on an IBC chain, and now we can just shard it all up and start trading it around, which is, pretty awesome.
Very.
We have people who want to put the properties on in various countries, the UK, Ukraine, Thailand, Vietnam, but each one, as we've already sort of said, is different to the next, and we can't really just launch it as a regional chain until we're confident that we have the regulatory stuff absolutely clear. It's been reviewed by several lawyers. It needs to be absolutely crystal clear. Otherwise, we program this in, we launch the chain, and then it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. The Doomsday scenario here, right? The Doomsday scenario is that we start one of these local chains. Somebody goes on and they sell land, right? Then we find out that it's not, the government isn't going to respect the entries on the blockchain ledger. And the way that we're preventing that Doomsday scenario is just by as ourselves individually, as the community, and as our companies, doing a hell of a lot of due diligence and making sure that everything is very clear. Now, I'm expecting that there will be bumps and weirdnesses along the way, because this is very different from how this stuff is done currently. But what we need to avoid is the application of the cryptocurrency concept of a rug pull to real estate, right? and we need to ensure that nobody uses our code to do that, because that would really, really hurt. So there's the down case, right? And then the up case is sort of as Billy said, I think getting the local chain up is the absolute priority. Okay, because once this commerce is existing, we can improve and model the systems that deal with the commercial flow.
Sure.
But until it exists, since this is a rather new idea, Well, it's hard for me to even tell you exactly how it'll work from place to place. But luckily, the inbound interest is really, really good. And, some of the stuff that we're looking at is like countries that do citizenship by investment.
Oh, sure.
Begin some conversations there. So that, at that point, right, countries that are offering citizenships by real estate investment, well, yeah, the state is real likely to, respect the entries on the ledger, because that's a strategic objective of that country.
Right.
We're also definitely, we're kind of pitching the idea of well, would you like an inflow of capital and high net worth individuals? We may be able to help with that.
Honestly, Jacob, that is the most appealing thing you've said so far from if you can facilitate that. Like I talk to these guys that are around the world. Like my friends in crypto literally are on every continent, seemingly, right? And we all have our own shit going on. And it's like, where could we go? What could we do? How do we, whether it's taxation or bullshit or wherever you are, right? Canada, like a bunch of buddies in Canada who are like, this is fucked up. We never thought this would happen. So the ability to be like, hey, I could bring a bunch of people who are very motivated to become investors in your infrastructure, and what they're looking for XYZ, like that is immediately actionable to a lot of high net worth individuals to go, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm in. Okay. Now we all know that there's a fine line there in terms of what you're doing and what you're giving, what you're taking. But look, I've even had the conversation myself where, look, so you guys are in Vietnam. It sounds like we have New York and the UK. Okay. You ended up in Vietnam one way or the other. I'm in the United States, and I've talked about it with my wife where it's like, look, there's a lot of shit going on here that is not desirable. Let's weigh the pros and cons of going elsewhere or investing elsewhere, or are we going to print ourselves into oblivion and we're just going to sit on the sidelines and let it happen to us? As people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I very much know what you mean. And that's not why I'm in Vietnam. I actually in a weird way got stuck, but it ended up being a very happy thing here. I was supposed to be here for about 4 to 6 weeks in early 2020. COVID showed up.
Oh yeah,
and
fair.
The projects I was working on flourished, and they were like, well, should we go home? I'm here, with my wife and kid.
Right.
And it just, we kept kicking that date further and further into the future. And then I work with a local computer hardware company that sells, well, they don't sell single board computers. They design single board computers, and helping kind of position them to build blockchain related hardware. And ended up extending the visa past, because when COVID started, right? So we were on just like visitor visas, and there was of course this big question like, what are we going to do? This thing is going to run out. And the government was just like, well, if you're here, you're here. We get it. Which, I've got to say, from my family's perspective, we're really grateful for.
Yeah.
There was an element of flexibility there, and that was huge. And then I began to work with PCB Viet, and but yes.
If I recall correctly, too, just to interject more of just like my Jeopardy knowledge, didn't Vietnam handle COVID better than like 99.9% of countries around the world?
For a long time, yeah. They closed down very quick. They just closed the borders. When the World Health Organization was like, you don't need to close your borders, Vietnam was like,
they closed that line from exactly.
They were pretty quick to do that. So, and that, for 18 months, it was just normal. There was no lockdown.
It's unbelievable, yeah.
I was sat in a bar, and everyone in the UK was locked up at home, and we just sat in a bar having a drink.
There was that 2-3 week lockdown, April of 2020.
Yeah, April 2020. It wasn't extreme though. Then there was the 2-month one.
In the summer.
That was extreme. That was like
Yeah.
you can't leave your house.
Right.
Yeah.
Military or wandering around.
That was tricky because I was running my osmosis validator. My osmosis validator was 30 kilometers away. And like, I don't know, it was just by the grace of God that it stayed up, really.
Smuggling raspberry pis around the city and things.
It's perfect time for Rob to come back on screen. When we had to last edit, I couldn't get Rob into the screen share one, but I wanted to have your website in the background. So Rob, I apologize for taking you off screen there for a little bit. But it's funny, bring you right back in as you're talking about validator being 30 kilos away. And what's funny, did we talk about this just real quick? Why the name Dig? Yeah. Where did that come from? Did you say that yet?
Oh, the name Dig?
Yeah.
So you like to build things, you need to dig, right? You gotta have a foundation. It's sort of the first step, and that's
nice.
Digging up the land.
Someone said it should be ant. I don't know if you were on this conversation. Someone said it should be ant because they were like ants dig and they dig holes and they create things. It should be like an ant space. I'm like, okay.
I could see that after a few beers making a ton of sense. Okay, that's but you're right. I mean, really, what I'm first off, I'm very interested because I can kind of see what you guys are going for. But you know, that first use case, that first one is going to be. Maybe I'm wrong. Usually, I have a pretty decent ability to put my fingers on the pulse. You get one example where this happens and it goes well, and you're going to make worldwide news. You're going to make worldwide news.
Yeah.
That's the thing, yeah. Like, especially if it can sort of be tied in with current events as well. Like, I really do think in Ukraine we have some pretty good connections there now. We've made a partnership with a bank in Ukraine with our other projects, DeFi for You, that kind of led into DigChain. So they will probably be quite keen to get on board with this as well, since they're really trying to expand into crypto. Sure. Since Ukraine just literally, I think last night, signed crypto into legalization. Yeah. They're very keen to be kind of the first bank in Ukraine to get on board with this. And others have also expressed interest as well. So with that, and then just with the people that kind of put us up with that and their personal interest in getting their own real estate or their friends' real estate on there, and given the political situation in Ukraine at the moment, and I don't know if that would be a benefit or a hindrance, to be honest, but I imagine it could be a benefit based on what we discussed earlier. Like if you're sat with this pile of cash and you're thinking, what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks? Right? So I feel like that could just get a lot of media attention just by nature of the surrounding events going on as well.
Yeah, I agree. Rob, you got...
do you think you guys will... Yeah, sorry. Do you think you guys will implement like something along the lines of DAO to discuss governance or discuss sort of deals?
Jacob, look at Jacob.
To get rid of the third parties and tokenize real estates.
Yes, hard yes. Okay. I have not like. Here's the status there. Because we didn't have the CW features to push the button on stuff like DAO, I have not pursued like those conversations just yet. My conversations concerning sort of the next stage of Dig from a software perspective, right, are just like, okay, what is the platform? And then actually it was really cool. It drove us to create. There were some like missing pieces of integration glue in Cosmos between an upcoming release of the Cosmos SDK that uses a newer release of Tendermint that allows for interchain and uses IBC Go v3 that allows for interchain accounts. But you see IBC Go v3 and the Cosmos SDK 46, they were not compatible. And everybody was like, well, we don't have time to make the glue. And sort of looked at the situation, looked it up, looked it down, and thought, no, it's time to invest in glue. And so our team actually, like today around 5 p.m., finished getting all of the tests on IBCv3, passing on Cosmos SDK version 46. Next step is to do exactly the same thing with CosmWasm. Okay, so the whole idea is to sort of have all of the features that are available in Cosmos available to users. So not only will it be DAO, it'll also be like the native Go groups module. And then the question is, of all of these, now that we've provided all these options, right? Which one works the best and provides those flexible things? And the most interesting thing about DAO though, like, it's CW, it's IBCable. And like I said, with that ping, pong, pong. Look, complex software interactions start with that. Right. And kind of go up, you just process those ping pongs and, do more with that. DAO and the whole Interwasm DAO looks like it's primed to, it may be possible to like collaboratively govern and administer real estate using something like DAO. And absolutely, so. We're looking into it.
Definitely.
That is very interesting to see those, because like again, Normie talking again. DAOs to me, and I said this to Jack the other day too when he was on the show. DAOs to me always kind of felt like a nice thing, but they were always so top heavy with either VCs or people that were early that it was always kind of bullshit. Like that's always been my feeling on DAOs, where it's like, well, it's all based on voting power. Yes, we sold 51% of the total share to our investors, but you can vote however you like. And it's like, well, fuck it. It doesn't matter what the 49% of the rest of us do. You guys do whatever the fuck you want. So I always was kind of like, all right, nice, but IBC is the first, or just everything in the interchain is the first thing I've ever seen where like DAOs are taken seriously, where it's not, okay, you airdrop here. It's not, we don't have VCs or seed investors. If we do, they're coming and buying it, not getting special treatment per se. And you have to really want to have that. So I will say I've been in crypto for now, 3 years. This is the first time I've ever actually looked at a DAO and not been like, all right, fuck you. Like, whatever. Because it's actually happening now. Apologies for my cynicism. I just, when...
No, look, your cynicism I think that really, I'm hearing the story of the first DAO. And if you don't, I can tell it to you. That was, 15, 16? Early Ethereum, I forget
the
exact date. Shortly after Ethereum launched, there was this thing, it was called the DAO, and a lot of the world's whole supply of Ether was invested in it, and it got joined.
Right.
And I think that actually set the whole concept back quite a bit.
Sure.
And
there's been a lot of recent ones as well. Like, I don't want to name any names in case I get the names wrong and accidentally accuse some poor innocent project of being a fucking ruffle. But
I'll name names, Billy. Don't you worry. I can do it. No.
So like Constitution now.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway.
But yeah, I know what you're saying, though. There's been other ones. It's not the only example. That is the most famous example. In fact,
kind of precarious situations with DAOs where it's been like promises were made and then they weren't kept, and then all of a sudden, someone maybe killed someone in India or something, and then all of a sudden this.
So you're talking about Wonderland and Sifu. Yeah. So,
like the founder of the DAO.
I'm sort of happy I've never even heard about this.
Of like,
yes, sort of. Okay, so the actual. So I'm going to blank on the chain. It was an exchange in Canada that essentially rugged everybody of their money because like the owner of the chain was just like gambling with the money. And when people went there, it was a big Ponzi. Okay. And Sifu and the owner of that exchange worked together. Sifu actually ended up leaving SIFU because he was like, that's even fucked up for me. And that was the guy who already had been to jail for a felony. Okay. And he was like, that's messed up. I'm still leaving. And then essentially the guy that owned the exchange in Canada ended up going to India and dying on vacation. No one could find the keys, whatever. Yeah.
Is he dead?
Allegedly. Yeah. So it's exitscam.show. Hold on. Exitscam.show. I actually know the guy, Aaron, who did this podcast, but exitscam.show talks about it. Jerry Cotton. Jerry Cotton was the guy for Quadriga in Canada that eventually ended up rugging. So anyway, moral of the story is then that Sifu guy ended up as head of treasury for Wonderland Time on Avalanche. And they were like, hold on, the same guy that was not guilty, but accused of having some improprieties with Quadriga is now managing $1 billion treasury on Avalanche? One guy? And it was a DAO. And so like, anyway, there was a bunch of stuff that went on about that. But again, like, you know, Daniel and Sifu and a lot of the guys in Time owned all the voting rights. So there was like a vote after it was found out that he was like a previous felon that was implicated in this Quadriga scam. And they're like, should we leave Sifu on? And it was like a 51 to 49% vote for him to be out. It almost passed because the guys who had all the voting power were there and like, no, we like him.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my indictment on the DAO system. But yeah, essentially, the idea of DAOs has always been kind of comical to me. And it sounds like this has real chance. And like the entire interchain, Cosmos itself, does it better than anything I've ever seen. So it's almost like a utopia in and of itself. And what you're describing with Dig is kind of that, like the guy in Puerto Rico who wanted to create his own little utopia, like of a beach community. Like you can do that and have equal voting rights or based on your, revenue in. And that is very, very interesting to me. So using DAO, having this stuff be cross-chain, very, very wild. So one thing that you said, or maybe I saw it on your website, where it's like, we're going to have boots on the ground in country. Okay, that's where my brain went next, because you're talking about doing stuff around the world. You're both in Vietnam. Now you're in Ukraine. There needs to be boots on the ground. You talked about legal representation and making sure these things were on the up and up. Talk to me about that, because those are some things where it's like, I need to check the backs on how you're going to do that. If you wouldn't mind, Billy, talking about that.
Yeah, so first of all, we have members team in various different countries, Vietnam, we have the UK, Ukraine, New Zealand, various others. So that's our team. But we've, as Jacob mentioned before, we've actually had a lot of inbound interest, not just from, people who might want to put their property on, but also from people just in the community.
Sure.
So, people who have a background in real estate or in various other things, people with backgrounds in kind of legal, people with backgrounds in finance and things, but who kind of have done the things that they immediately have seen and then reached out to us about that they see as being necessary steps to take. Like, okay, you guys could do it here, but you have to go and talk to, say, if you did it in like the Cayman, you would have to go and talk to like the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority.
Sure.
You would have to have this kind of person representing you, and this is how you would do it, and and yeah, there's been a lot of people coming to us with stuff that we're like, okay, we can work with you guys. We have this community pool there as well, so if we need to pay people, we can maybe pay out of that for a governance proposal. So obviously, like, there's only so many of us, and there's only so many places we can be in. And given the nature of the regional chains and the amount of regulatory sort of input that needs to be there, obviously it's not really, we can't just be like, hey, we're going to go and make
local
South Africa. It's like, no, it's not going to work. Like, we need people there who we can at least coordinate with, who are local, who know the deal, who can coordinate with us, or to whatever degree they need to or want to, or if it's us pursuing it, then we're going to need to utilize our contacts to get more people on the ground. But yeah, this, like you rightly pointed out, this is not something that we can just kind of sit with a laptop and just tinker with halfway across the world.
Would this be the job of the blockchain lawyer?
Possibly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. Frankly, it's going to involve probably lawyers all over the world. Every single one is going to require its own, specific implementation. We don't know what that looks like.
So, why I say it is sorry, why I say it is when say I'm trying to sell a house and I'm going to use Dig as to facilitate it. Then a lawyer, basically, at the other end of the deal, would sort of speak to the local authority and know their laws, and therefore they would be able to interact with you and give you guidance on what you can and can't do. That's why I was saying the job of the blockchain lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, so I believe that's the case, and in some places it's going further, and in some places we're speaking directly to the government. And it's like, okay, so tell us how you want for this to work. And that's an incredible thing, because that's like them saying, okay, no, we're cool with this. And now, and those conversations are not short. What I mean is, I don't expect to have outcomes on those for months at least.
Yeah.
But that's fine. The fact that we're having the conversations at all is semi-miraculous. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, there was really two things that you said right when we started that were kind of pinged in my head. And the first one was having Dig kind of create I'll call it the rules of engagement for expats between countries. We're yes, if you are a UK expat, you're allowed to get X amount of these types of loans within the UK, given that you were not permanently located there. Those are rules that people search, that people try to find, that they cannot find, because really there's no reason to do it except for specialized lawyers, right? That's the only reason why that information exists. If you can find that and hold a database, country to country, who can do what, where, and just keep it updated, that alone is a service to the world, even if it wasn't. Yeah.
Traffic. There are people looking to invest in real estate anyway.
Period.
Cash, full stop, right? There's
absolutely,
and you're right. Information is difficult to find, and I personally do try and find information on what I can and can't do in terms of investment and things in the UK.
Right.
Being a non-UK tax resident, and it's very difficult to find that, because it's most of the time when you say I'm in Vietnam, it's just kind of
yeah, okay, no, you have to be a UK citizen. Well, I am a citizen. I just live in Vietnam. Yeah, so it's very interesting, because I think there's a need there, a niche there that you could fill. The other part too, and this might be stupid, there could be a revenue generating aspect of that from even just connecting with Web 2 real estate, going hey, we're a web lead company, we'll connect you in, and you're going to pay us for connecting you in with people while you're building your treasury to kind of realize your final form, right? I actually used to work way back in the day for a marketing firm in Chicago that did that, where it was literally I got traffic I did not want per se, and I'm going to give it to you, and there's a fee recuperation for that. And they ended up becoming a billion-dollar company by getting leads that they did not want. Okay. And they were well, here, we'll give it out to you. And I can't really talk about a ton of it, but it was a legal services firm that was getting shit from all over the place. No, we can only operate in Chicago, but here, let me ship you out to a guy in New York who will know this better. And let me recoup funds. If you're doing this for worldwide real estate, there's a tremendous market there too, to go, yeah, here, let me ship you over. Here's people to talk to as you're building out the final end stage process. Just an idea. So we've had people dropping in and out here along the whole time. We've gone from 70 viewers to 30 to back up and whatever. And I've been asking most of the questions, guys, because I don't know how to stop myself.
Well, I've never done Twitch before, by the way. So I had no idea. In fact, I wasn't even totally sure we were live.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we are. there are people here. So if there are questions, and people are like hitting me up in my Telegram group too, and then also here. So any other questions that you guys have about this part specifically, please pop them in, and we'll certainly ask. What? So I have a habit of just kind of haphazardly going where the ball takes me. But what else do we need to know about Dig? Like I want to give you guys a platform as best you can to go. What we haven't covered already. Here's what you want to know if we missed anything.
Yeah, okay. I think we have covered quite comprehensively the main parts of it. You know, I would say if people want to find out more, the best places to do that would be the website, of course, but also the governance as well, because then you kind of get the live feel for how the chain is developing. Because, like, for example, we launched with some mistakes, really, right? Inflation was meant to be 35%.
Yeah. Wasn't set high enough.
And then so that got fixed through governance. The first gov prop was actually quite funny. But Dig's governance is the first governance proposal was, you know, fair play to this person, but they didn't really put the background in the context. They were just kind of asking for like a Dig allocation to work on the chain, but they didn't really announce who they were, so that got vetoed. And then the second prop was like increasing the deposit for a gov proposal from 10 Dig to 200,000 Dig to stop that from happening again. And then the third one was like, that's way too much, let's bring it down to 10,000, and that passed. And then it was like, you got to fix the inflation. So the first few gov proposals are quite funny. Like, and it's funny just to see people that being like, put it up there, and it's like, no, that's too much, put it there. Like, just figuring it out as they go through governance. And you know, I would say that that's kind of the place to keep a pulse on Dig as it develops, and also the website, because the website will be like having a big makeover in the next, I would say, probably month. Month probably is a realistic timeline.
The one where you can see the structure, where you know, when you land on it, you're going to be able to see Dig, you know, so
the whole kind of
globally speaking, and then it's going to show that Dig is more than one chain. We looked at the website a bunch and kind of came on that as like, this is something we are not communicating visually.
Yeah. So we'll have like a nice kind of graph as it will show the parent chain and then the regional chains, and then like the property coming off the regional chains. And it just I mean, we've had a lot of feedback, and some of it's been like, oh, what a great thing. And, you know, a lot of it's been like, it's cool, but I don't think you're doing this well enough, or like, I think you need to communicate this more. So it's, you know, really just been taking user feedback and just compiling it into a clearer vision of how Dig needs to be delivered to people, which I hope we've kind of utilized all of that in this call. And actually been able to give a clear sort of overview of what Dig is.
Yeah, that's it's been very, very interesting, and I think we have. And by the way, my plan with this is to kind of edit this video together and kind of lay it out with chapters, and hopefully have it be something that's searchable for people to go back and look at. Because even when I was trying to pre-research this conversation, I was like, there's not a ton out there. Like, hopefully we can be that and provide a service. My service to the community is here's a place to see this conversation. Is the intent anyway.
Well, thank you for that.
That's a great resource to have, and that, I think, to really boomerang around to the point, the question you made about milestones. You know, the first chain, the first regional chain, is obviously a big milestone, but I think coming from a more short-term perspective, that communication and improving it, and, you know, allowing people to see more what Dig actually is kind of probably for the next 4 to 6 weeks, our milestone that we really want to
absolutely
put out. So we'll be, you know, updating a proper full white paper that will be going out in the next couple of weeks that a lot of people are kind of contributing to now and looking over, and we'll probably get a nice design on it too, so it's a bit more easily digestible. But then also, you know, the website and stuff like this, I think, which, you know, since we've done this, I think we should do a lot more of these kinds of things. Actually.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And,
you know, the comms are pretty challenging, but also the more you do the comms, better you get at actually communicating like what it is you're doing.
Right. And that's like I said, the whole reason why I do this. A guy just popped into the chat. His name is like mine. His name is Strictly Plus EV. And he goes, what is this? First thing I've ever seen. What's going on here? And like just those kinds of like stumble upon conversations are why this stuff's fun. And selfishly, why I started this channel was not being able to find answers. Okay. A year ago, I was like, okay, I'm trying to learn shit and I can't find it. Maybe if I just invite people from projects on, they'll just come talk to me about it. And other people will find value in that. And like people are surprisingly willing to do that. Right.
And so it's valuable to us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And probably a really, really good way to go about things. Actually, the person who got me into cryptocurrency did something very similar for a long time.
Really?
The Beyond Bitcoin show. Yep.
No kidding.
That was around 2014. And I was a regular guest on his show for a while. And like, I actually had no involvement in the space, but I was just finding it to be incredibly fascinating. Kept showing up. And I don't know, about 2 years later, that was my full-time work.
Nice. Yeah. That's very, very cool. And by the way, the term plus expected value, are you guys familiar with that? Or like, it's really a poker term more than anything else, but are you familiar?
No, so I'm not. That's interesting.
Yeah. So plus expected value is essentially if you're making an investment or if you're putting on a bet in poker that the odds have shifted in your favor where you have a more likely positive outcome than a negative outcome, right? It's like he's saying not really a poker term. It's where it's been mostly used though. So can you put yourself in a situation where you have an expected positive result, which in my view of crypto is crypto. Okay. Like right now, the flywheel effect, the network effect of crypto is there's a greater likelihood of adoption and appreciation on your money, being the way things are moving than there is anything else. It's a plus EV play. I'm also a trader. I started trading stocks, equities and futures a dozen years ago. And actually a friend of mine about the same time that you were talking about, Jacob, who's the CEO of Stacked, which is the name of this channel, Stacked Lab, was like, you got to get into Bitcoin. It's $200. It's going to be a big thing. And I was literally like, fuck your internet money. That's dumb. Like in
that. Who do you think that at first, right? In fact, I'll tell you my Bitcoin story. It's a little humiliating though, right? I was a very, very early user of Bitcoin. Downloaded the thing like, when there was like nothing, right? Okay. And then I mined Bitcoin, guys, early. Now, I don't actually know if I found any.
Sure.
Okay. Let me tell you why. And one, at that time, there was no guide to doing it. All right. And guys, like, I was like, this is P2P money. Like, why is it not like Napster? WTF?
Right.
Closed. But yeah, I mean, I did go to the trouble of like, and it was a lot harder. There wasn't anywhere near the type of tooling. But amusingly, like, I probably could have made tremendous money had I thought about the fact that money moves maybe a little bit more slowly than downloading an MP3.
Yeah.
But well.
Yeah. You're right. And I was such a critic for so long. And then eventually I started looking into it and then I started believing in it. And then I literally quit my job, to pursue it after doing pretty well. Which, by the way, just as a native trader, people are going to look at this and be like, screw you, Jared. Trading crypto is way easier than trading anything else that exists because the level of market manipulation doesn't exist. So I was like licking my lips just to get in to make money. And then you start learning about it and go, oh boy, this is pretty special. I actually believe in this. And I think that's how probably a lot of people got in. Like, I'm going to try to trade and make some money. Now, what's this actually about? And then you learn more. So I have a couple other questions if you guys don't mind. I know it's like the middle of the night for you guys, isn't it? Okay, yeah.
Don't mind at all, please.
One of them, I'm going to start off is personal, not even work related, William, because I'm assuming you're a football fan, and I have to ask, are you a football fan? And who do you support?
So, like, not really.
Really?
That's I'm one of the few British people that doesn't really care about football.
Oh my God. Okay.
That always makes for awkward conversation in a bar as well. People are like, who's your sport? And I was like, man, I hope the ball goes in the net. Like, when I was young, like, so I'm from Essex, so one of the closest teams to Essex is West Ham United. So
Sure.
when I was young, it was like West Ham United, but then like as I got older, I just sort of stopped really having any interest in it. So
Yeah. West Ham.
How about
Wait, hold on.
yourself?
Isn't that Steve Gerrard's club now? Steven Gerrard, yeah. Pretty sure. Or is he Villa?
I don't think so.
I don't know. Well, as manager, anyway, I'm a Liverpool fan, and believe it or not, just anecdotally, I can actually trace my lineage back to England. My family is from Essex, no joke. 1691. Yeah. What's that?
Do you know which town?
I do. I have it somewhere. I don't have it in front of me. Okay, it is Villa. Sorry, Banu. Yeah, so I don't have it in front of me because it has like a hyphenated name, and I'm like, okay, I don't really know, but
Billericay or Chelmsford.
It might be Chapsford. I'll find it. I'm gonna ping you and be like, hey, here's where it is, because I just know it's from there. And they left from my family left from Essex and ended up in Massachusetts in the late 1600s, in early 1700s, and were like pilgrims, okay, and then made their way to where I live now in the Midwest. So pretty funny. We actually have it tracked back. The only reason why we have it is because one of my relatives was a government official in Massachusetts right after they got there. And so there's actually like history about him and how he got there. And I know that I am directly related to him. I think it's kind of funny. But
yeah, so we traced my family lineage, and it was mostly just people dying in workhouses in North London.
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
I'm trying to break that cycle.
Yeah, beauty. No, hey, you're out of the workhouses. So, Jacob, are you still there?
Yes. I'm right behind the display
behind camera.
here.
Yeah.
I am now. Yeah.
So Rob had to run. Highlander had to run, which is why I switched back to the 2-camera review for those of you watching. But he said something to me that I'm very interested in your opinion on that I wanted to ask before we got off. He was like, Jacob is the guy who keeps relayers in line and makes sure they're not messing around on any of the chains that he validates or whatever it is. And he's kind of the guy that is like not calling people out, but he's not willing to say, hey, you're not doing what you're fucking supposed to, and that you are essentially a validator of many different chains within the Cosmos. Do you see yourself as that role, or can you expand on that? I don't really know what that means, again, normie, but you know.
Okay. I can expand on that. And I didn't see myself as that. And then the osmosis APOC thing happened.
Okay.
Basically, osmosis, every single day, it has one really big block.
Yes.
It will process a transaction to nearly every user. And it was taking like 40 minutes for a lot of validators to complete that block. But, you know, I was able to look at my systems. You know, I was doing it in minutes, like single digit minutes. And then I tweaked my systems further, and I got it down to like 2 minutes. And I was like, hey, hold on here. Like this, it's not even necessary to have this long pause every day. And by the way, guys, we have driven chain uptime down to like 98%.
Sure.
What are we doing here? Right. You know, if you think about it, you know, 40 minutes is that every single day. Well, there was a decent portion of time every single day when osmosis was not available. I think today's APOC was 320 seconds.
Better.
In order to like kind of rally the community behind hardware upgrades, investing more in your validator. No, this isn't only a software problem. Yes, it is a software problem. Yes, you can solve certain software problems by upgrading your hardware, right? And in order to do that, I did something which I've now done twice, mind you. I took notional stake in osmosis, and I delegated it from notional to Joe Abbey. And I did that for a really specific reason. Joe was able to produce charts and graphs of APOC that actually showed like, okay, this validator is coming in at this time. And frankly, like I probably could produce such charts and graphs, but I certainly could not do it as well as Joe could.
Sure.
And I did not have time to do so. So like, Joe, like, look, let's get you into the validator set. You're a gem. You're very valuable. You do great things. And so like, sort of, I guess you could say that I was the genesis of that initiative. And actually, I will also say that some of the validators, you know, on Osmosis were none too pleased. But and then that's like tough because I don't really like to deal with that sort of stuff, right? But it's like, no, why don't we stay entirely and very rigorously fact driven here? I'm producing these results on my systems, which have these specs.
Sure.
And your results are, 15 times slower. So maybe you should change your systems. Maybe it's not just a software problem.
Right.
And by the way, like the changes that I was advocating are not terribly expensive. We're talking about $1,000 when, Osmo validators, look, we do well. And I'm incredibly lucky.
You should.
To be a validator on Osmosis. And, in fact, now you said you should.
No, meaning like you should be paid well is what I meant. Not like you should be lucky. Like, I just want to be clear. Because yeah, all right, go ahead. You should feel lucky, you piece of shit. No, that's not what I meant.
What I mean is that they should be paid well. And in conjunction with a new type of slashing, a new penalty, that can be levied on validators that either consistently don't perform or are fake.
Yeah.
That comes from governance instead of like right now, there's two ways to get slashed. There's downtime, and Osmosis actually does not have downtime slashing.
Okay.
And the second way, but most chains do. Okay. The second way to get slashed is to double sign a block. Okay. Yeah. And when you double sign a block, your stake as a validator is slashed, cut, burned, destroyed, as is that of the people who delegate to you.
Wow.
And the design of this system, right, is to keep people making good choices about like who runs the network. And one of the things I'm really, really excited about seeing happen on Osmosis, been brewing for a while, is kind of trying to introduce a floor level of compensation for validators. And in this case, what I proposed on the Osmosis Commonwealth was 100 Osmo a day. And what I also like, the proposal was that every validator should simply receive an additional 100 Osmo a day. The reasoning there is that is completely in line with like very high-end engineering salaries because
interesting.
Atomically, a single validator can be run by a single person, and it is, if done rigorously, definitely a full-time engineering role. And it's also very challenging. And the more skill that you bring to the table, the more value you bring to the network. Some code changes were necessary to like bring that to fruition, and I wouldn't be surprised if it takes another even 2 or 3 months to bring into place. And there'll probably be some governance debate on it as well. But like, I'd like to see the validators at the bottom of the list actually begin to get paid more to make the set more competitive.
Yeah.
I do think there's dead weight, like for example, in the Osmosis validator set, but then unfortunately in many validator sets all across Cosmos. One way I think to address that is just to make sure that it's incredibly desirable to be a validator. Like one of the things I said in the governance discussion forum about this additional 100 Osmo per day is like, well, look, we really, really do want the most skilled people in infrastructure and operations working very hard to validate osmosis. If we do that, that is going to cause, favorable outcomes for the reliability of the chain and increase the engineering pool. Maybe instead of like the validator enforcer, I don't like to really think about it like that. Maybe it's like I want to see validators make more meaningful engineering contributions, because we are generally like the ones most exposed to the software.
Right.
If you like were to look at like GitHub, you see thousands of Cosmos related commits in the past year, and many for osmosis, but many for other chains as well. And I just think that if more validators were doing that kind of thing, or even like what my osmosis validator ended up causing is dig and one craft economy. Like, had I not joined the Osmo Genesis, I don't think these things would actually exist today.
Right.
And we have an engineering team of 10 people now. Like, that is a lot of weight that we are adding to Cosmos. We have an infrastructure operation team. We have a Go team. We are building a Rust team.
Sure.
We have a team that builds mobile apps in Dart. And like, I just want for others to have that same opportunity that I did, and just like jump on it, because economically speaking, that's going to build Cosmos like crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to say just for the record, because I don't want to put words in Rob's mouth. I was the one who said enforcer, not him. He just said hold people accountable. So I was just me being a little dramatic for the way I set up my conversation. Right. But you're right, and quite frankly, it's an altruistic thing you're doing, and it's not like you're doing something that these people didn't know about because you told them or whatever it may be. Like, that is a big deal, which again goes back to my conversation with Jack last week, where he said the biggest growth in the interchain over the past a few months hasn't been any of us. It's been the relayers. It's been the people that are actually validating, making it better. And when he said that, I was like, that's great. I didn't really know what the hell he meant. And I guess this is an example of that.
Okay. So
please, if you wouldn't mind expanding on that too. Yeah.
I'll clarify a little bit. So our validating operations are relatively easy compared to the relaying. I mentioned that we have a dedicated infrastructure team of 3. And just so you know, I actually count myself on that team because so much of my time goes into running relayers in Cosmos.
Sure.
And what Jack was talking about, and it is the most bullish chart in maybe anywhere, the just ridiculous, enormous, exponential growth in IBC transactions in Cosmos. And concurrent to that, right? Well, the way that IBC works, you have chain A, you have chain B, and they do not speak to each other. Okay. Instead, in the middle, you have a relayer.
Okay.
And the relayer speaks to both chain A and chain B, using special transaction types that allow the two chains to, like, for example, when I send a token, one dig, from dig to osmosis, osmosis verifies with dig, okay, yes, this actually happened. And also, yes, there has been like continuous cryptographic continuity in this chain between this transaction and the last time dig transacted with osmosis. So IBC is really a remarkable technology.
That's the instant finality transferring from one to the next. That's what you're essentially referring to, right? Okay.
Yeah. So the instant finality part was necessary to build IBC.
Sure.
Like with most chains, at the tip of the chain, there is mutability for n blocks. So Bitcoin, about 3 blocks approximately. Like once you're 3 blocks in, it's most likely there's not going to be a chain reorganization.
Sure.
I don't recall how many it is for ETH. For chains that like came out of the Dan Larimer camp, so that's Steam, BitShares, EOS, they have a concept of what's called a last immutable block, which trails the tip by like a minute or two. And what that means is that during that minute or two, the state can change, and basically like that full finality is what actually allows for the IBC protocol to exist and function how it does.
Sure.
Props to Jack, by the way, because like when I got started, this was right after the Osmosis launch. I didn't know all that stuff, but I was running relayers. Okay, so I began to run the software, but I didn't really know how this stuff worked under the hood. And Jack literally spent a great deal of time over the summer teaching me the ins and outs of the protocol, and I'm tremendously grateful.
And this was back when you guys were at Tendermint, or since then?
Since then. So this was like summer 2021.
Oh, wow.
Jack
Okay.
noticed
Sure.
that I was a pretty high volume relayer. And kind of just like took me under his wing, answered every single question I had. And then additionally sort of like led me on like, okay, you need to check out this, and this is how such and such works. And oh, by the way, I built Jack. What I mean is Jack built the Go relayer as kind of like a learning tool. And I didn't know that at the start, but like when you do go through the Go relayer, it definitely helps you to learn how the IBC protocol functions. And then for more technical people in the audience, IBC is effectively TCP/IP, but you're not connecting computers, you're connecting chains. It has that same ACK pattern. So like, I'd say hi to you, then you say ACK, and then I ACK your ACK. And what this does is it makes certain that, the receipt of information has happened. And then when it comes to like moving valuable data between chains, because I should also say that IBC isn't only about moving tokens, and it might be the least exciting part of the protocol. So that's why I say valuable data, right? Tokens are just one example of valuable data, and that allows it to do so with certainty.
Sure.
And allows, it's really, I would say that IBC is absolutely driving the growth of Cosmos, and that like until maybe even the launch of Osmosis, I'm not certain anybody was sure that it was going to work out right.
Right.
But it's I'd say a small miracle of engineering that like thus far there has not been a major security issue with IBC. It's definitely because of that the full finality aspect of these chains, and just the protocol design is quite rigorous.
Yeah. No, so by the way, somebody asked a question that I didn't see, but I think you kind of touched on it. White Earp said, do they see any issues with scalability of validation? I don't remember what we were talking about at the time. Does that make sense to you as a question?
Well, so there are like, okay, I don't know which type of scalability that the question asker is talking about, but check it out. I'll address several scalability
Please,
questions. As an individual, there is absolutely no way that I'd be able to relay and validate 22 chains. Like our infrastructure teams, myself, Zoo, Long, those guys have been a tremendous help. And guys, if you see Notional, on your packets, please know it is not just me.
Sure.
Without that help, it couldn't happen. Additionally, there's scalability, human communication. And this is harder with the validation maybe than the relaying, although both matter. So like as you grow, right, there's more and more teams that you need to keep in touch with.
Sure.
And I'm definitely trying to figure out what the right solution is there because, there can't be 22 Jacobs, right? And in some cases, I'm thinking that for chains where our staking or our validator commissions are significant enough, we may just hire an individual to work exclusively with that blockchain community because each of them has their own important details.
Sure.
Liaise.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then there's another type of scalability of number of validators per chain.
Yes. Yeah, which by the way, I heard the guys talk about this last week. When they were at ETH Denver, Zaki and Jack and somebody else had a conversation about that. I didn't understand it, but I'm hoping that you'll touch on it now. So there's a YouTube video out of them talking about 120, why not 15,000, and how do you scale up validators? And so anyway, I'm curious your thoughts on this, so I can hopefully figure out what the hell it means later on.
All right, so I'll start with everything is a Canadian bank account until proven otherwise. Thank you, Justin. I'm talking about the Prime Minister of Canada, of course.
Yes.
No, seriously, like I believe that he has harmed trust in finance and financial institutions.
I agree.
Potentially permanently, and definitely for at least a decade. I mean, oh my God. So what happened in Canada recently, they, decided to censor the political viewpoints of protesters in Canada by stealing their life's work. And now, how do we prevent this from happening as our distributed systems grow, right? Well, if you have a chain with 10 validators signing, well, you've got to torture 7 of them to take it over. Okay. And again, I'm being dark and I'm being a bit.
No, I appreciate the imagery. This is how I learn. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So all right, you torture 7 out of 10 of them, and now you can defraud the user base without like anybody necessarily knowing.
Sure.
Right? Because you've compromised those systems, and maybe the other 3 know, but maybe you can shut them up too, or maybe you torture all 10.
Yeah. Right.
Or maybe you bribe all 10.
Yep.
They only need to be compromised in one way, right? It's not only, there's more ways to compromise an individual than just hurting them. Now, scale this up, okay? So one of the things we just learned through that example is that the more validators you have, the more distributed and secure your network is. And Bitcoin is a reasonably good example of this. Now, bear in mind that the consensus mechanisms are dramatically different. Okay, but Bitcoin has this like sort of passive model where you can contribute to the formation of the next block by these days you plug this insane computer with an incredibly loud fan in. I used to build these systems, Bitcoin mining systems and shipping containers. And so we had the shipping container that consumed a megawatt. Okay. And I actually believe that the latest generation that Drone Energy is shipping now, the 40-foot containers consume 3 megawatts. So, imagine it's just screaming noise, these computers that are they're more like hair dryers in terms of their energy consumption.
Sure.
They run full tilt 24/7. But the thing is, if you want to participate in Bitcoin consensus, you just plug one in, right? And that definitely makes Bitcoin quite censorship resistant. Now, okay, let's do osmosis, right? Osmosis has 100 validators.
Yep.
So we follow the rules of Tendermint consensus. We torture 67 of them, but they don't have equal stake weight. Okay, they don't have equal vote power. So I believe in today's osmosis, we torture the top 18.
Okay.
And Now the question about scalability, as you add more validators, a couple of things happen. Each validator signs each block, okay? So that signature is stored on the chain and it increases the size of the block. In addition to that, those signatures need to be processed by the other validators, right? Because otherwise, you just go and sign whatever, right?
Yeah,
oh,
sure.
hey, it's a signature. That has computational overhead. It hits the CPU.
Yeah.
When you add, and this was really, really cool. I want to give huge credit to the OmniFlix team for this one. It was one of my favorite, like, Cosmos engineering moments. So they had this test net where they invited on 900 validators. Interestingly, it worked. It didn't work great at first, and it's fair to say it probably never worked great, but like they were doing about one block every 15 minutes. Okay, I had this idea, so I was reading what they were doing. This is fascinating because I always wanted to answer that question. How many validators can you have? Because the more decentralized, the more distributed a network is, the more secure it is. And by the way, all of this now ties back to the Canadian bank account question.
Right.
Interestingly, so I was able to take one really powerful server that had a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection.
Sure.
And I allowed 3,000 inbound concurrent connections to it. And I was, hey, could everybody just like add my machine as a peer? Interestingly, it worked. And after that, that network was making blocks about once every 15 seconds, which that completely exceeded anybody's expectation for like what Tendermint P2P could do.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was very, very impressive as a result, and a really, really neat example of community coordination too.
Wow. So first off, that's a hell of an answer. And thank you. Cause both from like your personal operation and then into, how this stuff actually works, because people are going to be like, Jared, how have you been in crypto this long and not functionally understand what proof of work is and proof of stake is? But you essentially just broke it down to as easy as you could possibly understand what those things are. So now you kind of get it. And it probably, maybe it is the time, maybe it isn't the time, but you hear people talk about the pitfalls of proof of stake. And is that what they're referring to? Essentially the fact that it is perhaps more easily overtaken than it would be the proof of work scenario you described? Or like, what would the naysayers say as to why this is a bad idea long run? Which I think nobody really does that anymore, but let's say they are, right? Like, what is the downside argument?
They're definitely still saying it.
Okay.
And I actually think it's because of a fundamental disconnect between the user communities. Allow me to explain.
Sure.
Bitcoin is, in my opinion, the world's best money, and like to say, like neck and neck with Monero. Okay, It seems that Monero's privacy guarantees actually work, which that's a little shocking. Okay, that actually means that Monero is one hell of a technical accomplishment.
Sure.
And how do we know that they work? Well, there are numerous bids from numerous intelligence agencies to try to break Monero. And the bids, people keep tendering these bids, so we can assume that it is not broken.
Right.
Bitcoin, on the other hand, is completely traceable. It's kind of part of its design, though, right? It has that triple entry bookkeeping feature.
Yeah.
And that's sort of in its nature. So proof of work versus proof of stake. Now check this out. This is something I don't think a lot of people would say and does require explanation. I do not think that Cosmos proof of stake coins are money. Okay. I'm going to walk you through this real quick. Like, Bitcoin is money in many ways because it does not have additional features.
Sure.
Bitcoin's simplicity is what lends it to being an incredible form of money. And like, yeah, you can't do much with Bitcoin. That's, in my opinion, kind of the point. It just allows you to move those coins around. Now, if we look at Cosmos, each of these coins is heavily driven by governance.
Yep.
And you know how I earlier kind of like, you were asking like, well, like, what is the value of DIG exactly? Then I started talking about the Cosmos Hub. And I'm like, well, what I'd like to see is for the Cosmos Hub, to begin to actually invest in projects and somehow construct a return, right?
Yeah.
And like, that is an application of the governance module in the Cosmos SDK. And like, it's I actually ran out of words the other day on Twitter to describe like, what are these things? Because I could tell you some stuff that it's not, right? I don't believe that they're money. They're not equity. There's not a corporation. I'm a shareholder in a bunch of corporations, and let me just tell you, like, a corporation has a much tighter and more defined structure.
Sure.
Also, in a corporation, you do not have the sort of access that you get on like one of these Cosmos chains. Okay, so what I mean by access is if I have one atom, just one, okay, I can hop on the Cosmos Hub and I can create an IBC channel to another chain, do all kinds of crazy stuff, and then I can take my remaining, I don't know, like half atom, right? I can make a governance proposal because somebody else can deposit on it. Okay. So with a tiny, tiny amount of like monetary value, I can do a tremendous number of high value things. And by the way, if you have one atom out of the total supply, I mean, you're not a meaningful stakeholder, but you get full access. So, corporations don't work that way, but there is, obviously, some comparison there. But this is something new, and I hate the term DAO. But every like, I'll even tell you why I hate the term DAO. It's so ambiguous, right? Like, decentralized autonomous organization. I mean, was it exactly autonomous? Well, in the case of one of these chains, not really. They depend on at least the validator set to continue to operate, and then
Good
their
point.
economy depends on the community. Yeah?
Yeah. No, I was just saying good point. That was it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I figure that in a few years, we will have better words to describe this stuff. And definitely would encourage you to like really go hard on studying the relationship between like the technology layers of the stack and governance and the economy. Because what we've built is something where they're not distinct. And that's why I'm claiming it is something genuinely new, that it is not money, that it is not equity. Balaji Sreisen, former Coinbase CTO, he referred to it as network equity. And that's close, but
right.
I am not, equity, we start thinking like shares, and that this is not that.
Yeah, ownership.
And well, there's politics here. I can assure you that, the software for Cosmos was written with a certain political bent. In addition to that, as a validator of 22 chains, I can also assure you that each chain has its own political outlook.
Right.
I'll even say, Dick, we built that thing on a very, very, very strict, like, free market. We want to facilitate trade. that is not every chain, and it should not be every chain. This
Sure.
is probably the most exciting part is the economies of Cosmos chains actually in some cases differ quite a bit.
Yeah.
Use
Yeah.
the same software.
That's I think it's one of the cool things about this. And I think what I mean, I'm excited to watch Dig develop and to see some of these partnerships really start to happen. I mean, you've earned a fan in me, and hopefully I'll be able to participate as best I can and help however I can. Like I said, I help with this video, I help with comms, getting the word out, telling people that I know about as best I can. And so I'm always happy to do that. And I'm trying to be as respectful as time as possible. I know it's like middle of the night for you guys. So I do appreciate you doing this.
So, you know.
Yeah. So, by the way, the person who asked the question on scalability said that was an awesome killer answer. Thank you. There was a question that kind of got, what percentage is block valid? How many transactions are tested in a block? How is JUNO block 6.31 seconds? That doesn't make sense to me. I'm assuming that's rather straightforward to you.
Well, no, but I can talk about the dynamics of like shaping a block, right? So, hi, question asker. Let's talk about cramming stuff into a block in Cosmos. Keep in mind that every chain since Bitcoin has had a somewhat different mechanism for cramming stuff into blocks, although if they're built using the same software framework, for example, comparing a Cosmos chain to a Cosmos chain, you're going to see the same thing. So in Cosmos, we reap the mempool. And what that means is that imagine an interblock period as something where actually nothing happens. Okay. So in this, 5-second span of time, right, the state is not changing at all. And nodes are filling their mempool, right? And a mempool, what that is, Bitcoin is definitely the clearest example of a mempool. And if you were to Google Bitcoin mempool, you'd see some really fascinating stuff. The Bitcoin mempool is effectively shared RAM, right? What it is like, it's a queue of transactions that have not yet been written to the Bitcoin blockchain. There is a limited size, and of course, Bitcoin being designed how it is, the way that it works is that in general, a miner will process the highest priced transactions first. So that's why if you put a higher fee on your Bitcoin transaction, it's going to go through more quickly.
Right.
Especially during times of congestion. Now, actually, Cosmos is we're just adding mempool prioritization features. That's coming in Tendermint 35.1. And guess what? That's one of the reasons for the that stack redesign. Right. Where I pushed on getting all the latest versions. In addition to that, Osmosis is, and I love this stuff. God bless Dave. Dave is one of the Osmosis founders and engineers. And, he has this notion that it'll be possible to armor the mempool, right? To make it invisible until that's committed using a thing called threshold cryptography. Now, why does this matter? This matters because then nobody is going to be able to front run.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I thought that's where we were going. Let's go. Okay. Keep talking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. Like, it's just, as the Cosmos software stack gets more advanced, and it's interesting because we're developing Cosmos across, let's say 20 chains. And the reason I say 20, even though right now in the chain registry there's 50, is that many of them don't necessarily contribute original code at any level of the stack. And actually that's fine. Like, you're welcome to pick up the code and use it however you'd like to. Sure. And, that is something that I think is contributing strongly to like the economic network effect that we enjoy.
Yeah.
So anyhow, he was asking about block formation. All right, so the bigger a block is, sometimes the longer it's going to take to process. Give me an example. That daily block on Osmosis, the so-called APOC block with so many transactions in it. Reason it takes so long is there's a module, piece of code inside Osmosis that pays out every single user individually. The call is send from module to many. And so more computationally complicated that block is, longer it'll take. The more validators that you have, the more latency you experience. So like the internet exists in the real world, right? Meaning connection speeds are variable everywhere, all the time. It's a really interesting potential source of entropy. That is to say, the ping times between nodes in a network. Entropy being just random numbers, and random numbers being they're shockingly valuable if you're doing cryptography. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
Which is a little weird, right? But what you find is that most ways of getting entropy are actually like pseudo-random, potentially predictable, therefore potentially compromisable. And what was my point? Yes. So varying latencies. As you increase the number of nodes, the time it takes to make a block will go up. But this is Tendermint. Now we have to play by the rules of the consensus. So right now, let's just look at Osmosis, let's say. Only the top 18 nodes play a significant role in the formation and the length of time it takes to get to the next block.
Sure.
The fewer nodes you have, the shorter blocks can be.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Look, this is a very, very thorough answer, which I appreciate because you actually hit what he was talking about. You know, why are some shorter or why are some longer? You know, what percentage is required? You know, very interesting stuff for people that are, you know, leaning into this. I know this is going to be tremendously helpful. And then this is my last question, and only because you alluded to JUNO earlier. You were talking about this stuff not being money. Okay, you're like, look, in my opinion, Bitcoin's money, whatever it may be. And then there's this thing that's called neta money. And so someone said, well, is neta money then, Jacob? Because you were saying that nothing is money. It's essentially more of like a networking whatever. So I'm just curious your thought, because my show and my Telegram group, somehow we leaned into JUNO very early and often, and we love JUNO to the limit that we can understand it. So is neta money by your definition, and obviously how that plays into JUNO and all that? Would love your opinion.
The more functionality that neta is given, the less monetary it will be.
Okay.
That's my opinion there.
Sure.
And I believe that there are plans to add functionality to it, but here's the other thing, though. Like, in some ways, tokens and Cosmos may be better than money.
Yeah, true.
Money is like this very, very plain, you know, please begin by thinking about like an ounce of gold, right? It doesn't do a damn thing, but you can go and buy stuff with it, right?
Right.
And if we were to actually, maybe instead of going into the massive soliloquy, I will say this, that I've definitely read the work of Seyfedin Amous, that I do not agree with everything the man says, but when it comes to money, holy cow. Like, if you read Seyfedin Amous's work on, well, you know, what was the book? The Bitcoin Standard and then the Fiat Standard. I have not yet read the Fiat Standard. After reading the Bitcoin Standard, I literally went to go and have dinner with Seyfedin. That was just holy crap. I drove from Buffalo to New York City. For that, there was some sort of like a book signing and dinner thing. I'm like, yes. And me and my father went and did that. And like, I actually disagree with some of his takes on like the place in society of crypto, because I see crypto as like really important to the political right and left simultaneously. And interestingly, I mostly, I lean personally quite left socially, quite right financially.
Sure.
Anyhow, point being that were you to read his work, that's the definition of money that I subscribe to.
Gotcha.
For sure. Yeah.
So additional functionality beyond the store of value. I mean, again, that's like the line on Neta is, a scarce store of value. My understanding, it's to be deposited for DAO rights. So it is indirectly functional, but not directly functional. Anyway, it's fascinating. Nobody really knows what happens for like another week or more when the claim window is done. So I guess we'll find out. But guys, I'm going to let you go. I know you're probably like, dude, it's breakfast time. Can we please get off this thing? But
the last call starts at 6 a.m. One of the things.
Jacob works 20 hours.
Yeah,
I imagine.
that's true.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up.
That's no, look, I totally get it. This has been wonderful, guys. So just to reiterate for anybody who watched or tuned in, we have William and Jacob from DigChain. I'm going to chapter index, put everything together so you can go back and search this. I'll share it to you guys. I don't know if you're on Telegram or not, but I'll connect with you through Highlander. And this has been a hell of a good time, guys. This has been very helpful for me. And I'm getting notes from people on Telegram and also in here directly like, holy shit, this is great. You got to have these guys back as they hit milestones. So would you be open to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, in fact, as soon as when V2 is done, I'd be happy to come on. And
let's do it.
Maybe probably the biggest milestone is like
I would love to.
Property is listed.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. And you guys have both been troopers for popping in and answering my off the subject questions here and there and taking all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for coming on in the time, guys. Thank you. And I will send out all the relevant links soon, and hopefully we'll keep the interview chain going. So thank you once again, guys.
Oh, thanks for hosting.
See you guys.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
for everyone for watching as well.
Of course.